Dear audience friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Narrative Relationship. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like these. Now, let's dive into today's story video. I was raised in a quaint town and deeply in love with my high school sweetheart. I envisioned our life together as a heartwarming country song. We were each other's first and had been together for 5 years. I was on the brink of proposing to her, at least that was the plan. We were supposed to go to the same college and then tie the knot. But all that changed one fateful night when I found her in a nightclub restroom with a promoter. I was shattered, and this incident, along with others that followed, left me deeply scarred and weary of women throughout my adult life. I'll share some of the most distressing experiences that have left me feeling broken. My then-girlfriend once declared that those who cheat should be hanged. We were watching a movie together when a character cheated on her spouse, and she made this comment with a look of utter disgust on her face. I remember thinking she's the woman of my dreams. Little did I know that a year later, I'd find her in a public restroom. I never imagined she could cheat on me. Our parents were friends and trusted us implicitly. She could even stay over at my place without them batting an eyelid. Our families were convinced we were destined to be together. However, when she turned 20, it was as if a switch had been flipped. Suddenly, she yearned for the party life, the club scene. But since we were both under 21, we couldn't get into the kind of clubs she was interested in. As an introvert, I was okay with waiting until I was of legal age, but she was insistent on getting a fake ID. I voiced my concerns about the risks, but she wasn't deterred. A few weeks later, she turned up with a remarkably authentic-looking fake ID. When I asked where she got it, she mentioned a guy who had made fake IDs for some of her friends. Despite my reservations, I agreed to get a fake ID so we could hit the clubs together. I was more of a homebody, so the club scene with its loud music and bustling crowds wasn't really my cup of tea. But ever since she turned 20, she seemed to have this urge to experience it all. She even labeled me as dull when I expressed my reluctance to join her in environments rife with pills and alcohol. According to her, this was what young adults were supposed to do, and we shouldn't miss out just because all her friends were. Wanting her to be happy, I reluctantly agreed to join her. I even convinced a close friend to come along, and we both ended up getting fake IDs. Fast forward to the next Friday, we had plans to hit the town, but I fell ill and couldn't make it. I assumed my girlfriend would cancel too, but she decided to go with one of her girlfriends instead. I recall thinking that she seemed different, and even her circle of friends had changed. The following week, when I was feeling better, we decided to go out again, this time with my best friend. As we arrived at the club, I was anxious that the fake ID wouldn't pass muster. To my relief, the bouncer barely glanced at it before letting us in. I would later discover that this club was notorious for lax ID checks and was eventually shut down for serving alcohol to minors. Once inside, I noticed a red flag. My girlfriend was enthusiastically waving at a tall, well-dressed guy standing near the entrance. He winked at her, and she responded with a broad smile. When I asked who he was, she casually mentioned that he was just a promoter. I tried to probe further, feeling a pang of jealousy, but the blaring music made conversation difficult. She never answered my question, presumably because she couldn't hear me over the noise. We got our drinks and started to mingle, following the crowd's lead. The more we drank, the more enjoyable the music became. My buddy and I were dancing and having a blast. Suddenly, I realized my girlfriend was nowhere to be seen. I asked my friend if he'd seen her, and he said she'd gone to the restroom. About 10 minutes later, she still hadn't returned, and we decided to explore the upstairs area. We'd heard there was another bar up there with a great city view. We thought we'd take a quick look and then head back downstairs before my girlfriend returned and started looking for us. Upstairs was more of a lounge area, quieter and with comfy couches. It was an open roof, so the noise from downstairs was less intense. As we headed towards the bar, I spotted a woman in the corner who looked a lot like my girlfriend, chatting with the same guy we'd seen at the entrance. I moved closer to confirm it was her, and sure enough, there she was, smiling and engaged in conversation with him. I interrupted them and asked my girlfriend to join us immediately. The guy just smiled at me, while my girlfriend looked annoyed, as if I'd interrupted something significant. I asked her who he was and how she knew him. She replied that she was trying to get us into the VIP section, that he was a cool club promoter, and that he was friends with everyone. She added that he had lots of female friends, so I had nothing to worry about. I expressed my disappointment that she left us without saying where she was going, and I made it clear that I wasn't interested in the VIP area. I wanted her to stay with me and not to chat with that guy again. She accused me of being jealous and controlling, which led to an argument. I left her with my friend in the corner and went to fetch us some drinks. When I returned, she was engrossed in her phone, texting someone. My friend then excused himself to find the restroom downstairs, leaving me alone with my girlfriend, who was still engrossed in her phone and not speaking to me due to our earlier argument. A few minutes later, she stood up, ready to leave. I asked her where she was going, and she replied with a hint of sarcasm that she was off to the restroom and invited me to follow her since I seemed to have trust issues. I chose to ignore her comment as she stormed off. Now I was alone, waiting for both my friend and my girlfriend to return. After a few minutes, my friend came back, grinning from ear to ear. I asked him what was so funny, and he shared that while he was in the restroom washing his hands, he overheard a couple getting intimate in one of the stalls. We were aware of the wild antics that could occur in clubs, and we both found the story amusing, chuckling about it. But an instinctive feeling nudged me to dash downstairs and see the spectacle for myself. Being a newbie to the clubbing scene, I'd heard of such incidents happening frequently and had seen posts about it online. I was curious to witness it firsthand. I asked my friend to direct me to the restroom, then I hurried downstairs, hoping to catch the action before it ended. Upon reaching the restroom, I had to wait in line for a bit. The place was chaotic, filled with inebriated people chatting loudly and laughing. There were about 6 stalls, but I couldn't hear any sounds of intimacy like my friend had described. I started to think maybe my friend was pulling my leg, so I decided to use the urinal, which was positioned parallel to the stalls. As I was relieving myself, one of the stall doors swung open. I instinctively glanced over my shoulder to see who was coming out. To my utter shock, it was my girlfriend emerging from the stall. She was adjusting her dress, and right behind her was the promoter, fastening his belt. I was so stunned that I didn't even notice that I had started to pee on my own pants. I yelled out her name, demanding to know why she was sleeping with him. She was taken aback by my discovery and was at a loss for words. She eventually retorted that I was causing her embarrassment. Can you believe that? She had just emerged from a men's restroom after doing, well, you know what, and she had the audacity to say that I was the one embarrassing her. I hurled a barrage of insults at her, causing her even more embarrassment. The crowd around us laughed and cheered as our argument escalated. Meanwhile, the club promoter had vanished without my noticing. I told her to go home with the club promoter she was sleeping with and declared that we were done. I stormed upstairs and informed my friend that we were leaving. He trailed behind me, asking about my girlfriend, but I didn't reveal anything until we reached the car. He was dumbfounded when I told him that the girl he had heard having sex in the men's restroom was my girlfriend. I was in disbelief. How could she do this to me? The image of her emerging from the restroom kept replaying in my mind, haunting me even as I penned down this account. I was fuming and cursing her all the way home. After dropping off my friend, she even had the gall to call me, questioning why I had left her at the club. I retorted that her new boyfriend should be the one to take her home. I got home and spent the entire night wide awake, unable to sleep. She kept ringing my phone, but I just let it ring. I should have blocked her number, but it wasn't that simple to just cut her off. At the same time, I was too furious to even consider talking to her. The next morning, she showed up at my doorstep, pleading for me to take her back and blaming her actions on the alcohol and its intoxicating effects. I asked her how many times they had been intimate, and she claimed it was just that once. However, I later discovered from her friends that she had visited that club several times before we went together, which suggested that she must have done it more than once. The breakup left me shattered. I lost my appetite and couldn't eat properly for days. My parents became concerned, and I finally told them about what my ex-girlfriend had done. They informed her parents, who then confiscated her fake ID. This led to a huge argument between her and her parents, which eventually resulted in them kicking her out of the house. Rumors started to spread about her, and people began to exaggerate the story, claiming that multiple men had taken turns with her. I had no idea how or where these embellishments originated. She became infamous in our town for her actions and had to move away. Her relationship with her parents remained strained due to the incident at the club's restroom. The fact that she was known as the girl who got into men's bathroom was not only humiliating for her, but also for me. Even after our breakup, I made the choice to relocate, leaving behind my friends, family, and all the drama. I moved to another state to escape the humiliation. I left everything behind and started anew. My plan was to focus on myself and steer clear of serious relationships. I stuck to my plan and spent my college years casually dating without any serious commitments. I was a bachelor, enjoying the company of different girls, and I loved it. After college, I landed a job and put all thoughts of my ex-girlfriend behind me. I never let my guard down because I didn't want to experience that kind of disappointment again. I thought my ex-girlfriend was one of a kind, but she turned out to be the exact opposite. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious ever developed. I would bring girls to family events because I didn't want to attend alone. My family wasn't too fond of the girls I dated because they had tattoos or dressed differently. The girls I was seeing were city girls, some a bit wild, but I preferred them over pretentious girls like my ex who cheated on me. After landing a job, I met a new girl at work who was simply amazing. She completely transformed my life. I didn't see any obvious red flags, so I allowed myself to be vulnerable again. However, after a few months, I started getting this nagging feeling that she might be cheating on me. I was experiencing panic attacks and the like. I brought up my concerns to her, and as expected, she denied everything. A few more months passed without any issues. She had already met all my family and friends, and everyone seemed to genuinely like her, which was unusual because no one had ever really warmed up to anyone I dated since my ex who cheated on me. I took this as a positive sign, but it still took me some time to trust her enough to let her move in with me. We started living together, and everything seemed to be going well. But then the intrusive thoughts began. She had me convinced that I was losing my mind, to the point where I considered admitting myself to a mental health facility. I thought I was dragging past trauma into my current relationship. I kept trying to reassure myself that maybe it was just my past haunting me, and I had nothing to worry about. Everyone else was telling me the same thing. In November 2021, we got a positive pregnancy test. Considering this was my first child, I was over the moon. But then, in December 2021, just a few weeks later, those unsettling feelings returned. I started digging into her social media and was shocked by what I discovered. It turned out she had been cheating on me for about 11 months. I immediately downloaded all the chat logs and accessed every account I could. I didn't stumble upon any concrete proof of physical contact, just the exchange of explicit photos, which in my eyes is still infidelity. She had also been sharing intimate pictures and videos of me, even agreeing to items involving me without my consent. Every day, I'd uncover more, and she'd insist that's all there is. I have no reason to lie to you. At one point, she even told me I didn't have the right to know. Now I'm left questioning the paternity of this child. Again, I found no evidence of her physically meeting someone else, and believe me, I dug deep. I'm not sure if I'm being irrational for doubting the child's paternity. At this point, she's still in her first trimester, and the thought of waiting until birth to know for sure is torturous. I want to be happy with her and raise our child, but the nagging doubts are unbearable. I can't believe I'm going through this again. I started to wonder if all women are like this, or if I'm just incredibly unlucky. Clearly, I can't just take her word for it. Even if I were on my deathbed, I doubt she'd tell me the truth. My job has given me a background in interrogation, so I have a knack for detecting lies. But she's a tough nut to crack. It's especially difficult when it involves someone close to you, as opposed to a stranger you know nothing about. I still have a strong feeling she's not being entirely truthful. I was utterly bewildered and didn't know what my next move should be. I left my own house to crash at a friend's place just to clear my head. She pleaded with me to return, but I told her I needed a prenatal paternity test. She argued that such a test could harm the baby. I did some digging online and sent her the information proving her wrong. After several days of back and forth, she finally agreed to take the test. As it turned out, the baby wasn't mine. Once I discovered that, I asked her to leave my house. Her main concern was that she didn't want to terminate the pregnancy due to her beliefs. I questioned her if having an affair was also against her beliefs. She was left speechless. I told her that whether she chose to keep the baby or not was irrelevant to me. What mattered was that she needed to be out of my house by the next day. Apparently, she decided to terminate the pregnancy because 3 months later, there were no signs of her being pregnant. We continued to work at the same place for another 5 months before I decided to look for another job, as she kept trying to reconcile with me. I, a 38-year-old guy, was tight buddies with this dude, Tony, since we were 8. We were like brothers and told everyone we were practically family. After school, we even got a place together, and he was the first one to meet my future wife. He had our backs and promised to watch over us whenever we hung out with him. He didn't mind getting all sentimental with me. We meant a ton to each other, but even with our tight bond, Tony and I had a difference when it came to booze. He hit the bottle every day but kept it in check after work and on weekends. He never slacked, did his job, or acted irresponsible, so our friendship carried on, and I never brought up his drinking. The next thing I recall is showing up at the wine tasting as a surprise treat for my wife. I gave her a tap on the shoulder and went in for a kiss. When she turned around, she was so startled that she smacked me. I chuckled about it, but amidst my laughter, I noticed genuine fear on both of their faces. It was like I wasn't supposed to be there. I started explaining that while I was at work, I couldn't help but think about them and felt it was important to join them. Even though they were trying to put on smiles and avoid looking at each other, they seemed terribly uneasy. They looked sickly, even though they were trying to appear normal. Throughout the rest of the day's activities, my wife tried to act normal, but she was anything but that. She'd say completely random things and point out trivial stuff, all in an attempt to fill the awkward silence. My best friend Tony was disturbingly quiet and kept his distance from me. I decided to spend another night in wine country, so we booked the same hotel room where they cheated. I did this on purpose, driven by their actions, and I was determined to uncover the truth. Since there were 2 beds, I asked them which ones they slept in, and both of them began stumbling over their words. My wife excused herself and headed to the bathroom. My buddy Tony, on the other hand, couldn't keep the truth bottled up any longer. He started by admitting he couldn't bear the thought of not being my best friend anymore. It was eating him up, the idea that he might lose me. I acted like I was perplexed, but deep down, I had a gut feeling that they messed up big time. He went on to say they were pretty wasted the previous night, mainly because she was upset about me not joining them. When they got back to the hotel room, she walked out of the bathroom naked and started making advances on him. He couldn't resist, and that's where his words trailed off. Trying my best to keep my cool, I questioned him if they had been intimate. He just swallowed hard, no words came out. I swung a punch at him. It was like a throwback to our roughhousing days as kids, except this time, he'd been with my wife. I felt a deep loathing for him. He stood there speechless, holding his face, while I yelled to my wife through the bathroom door that I'd never trust.